pals, I'm here today with rough, messy, windswept hair, so apologies for that mess. I might be able to sort it out. To talk about my goals I had for reading in 2021 and whether I achieved them, and then if I have any goals for 2022 and what my plans are around them. I have some scribbled notes and tally charts on a notebook in front of me. I've not made graphs or pie charts, I apologise, I'm way too lazy and unorganised for that. So yeah, this is probably going to be quite rambly and chatty, so I hope that's okay. And yeah, let's crack on. So, my first and most memorable goal for me of 2021 was that I wanted to read all the books on my shelves that I already had at the start of 2021. That number was 63 books, okay, and probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 of those I would have got for Christmas in 2022, so I'd have only had them for like a week. So it wasn't so much those ones I was worried about, it was the ones that had been sitting there for longer. And a lot of those books had been sitting there for years, some of them 9 years, as long as I've had this channel. A lot of them I got in around 2017 and they'd just been sitting there. And they'd survived lots of unhauls. So I think an interesting topic that people like hearing people talk about on BookTube, or at least I'm fascinated by, is how people reduce their TBRs and how people feel about their TBRs. Now, I think at its highest, my TBR was, or TBR is like all the unread books I owned and were in my home. And I think at its highest that was around 300. And I just got to a point then where I would feel overwhelmed, I could never choose a book to read, I would feel guilt for over a year about specific books on my shelves I never found the time for. So there was a lot of guilt attached to that. And then I realised, I got to a point where the guilt overrode the enjoyment I got from buying books. So whereas before I'd have been like, oh my god, I'm having so much fun like choosing which books to pick next, that wouldn't override the guilt that I was feeling about the ones I already had. So that was one factor. And the second factor was that I realised that my reading taste changed so much over the years that if I buy a book in 2017, then the reader I am in 2020 might not be interested in that, or might give it a go and just the writing style won't work for me because like my reading tastes change. Even to the degree where like some books I rated 4 or 5 stars a few years ago, I doubt myself. There's some books that I'm like certain that I still love just as much. There's quite a few books I've raved about on this channel back in 2015, 2016 where I'm like, I don't know if I still feel that way, because reading tastes change, or at least they do for me. And so there was a big factor of guilt, and there was also a big factor of just having this collection that didn't really represent me anymore as a reader, and the only way I found around that was to reduce the TBR, right? Because that eliminates the guilt, and that also eliminates books sitting there for a really long time. Because if you only have, say, 30 unread books, the likelihood is you're going to get to them, if you read, 10 books a month or something, you're going to get to them in a few months, which is where I wanted to be as a reader. So I had those 63 books, and pretty much failed this goal, to be honest, but I feel okay about it. And the reason I feel okay about it, and this is maybe a little bit like, I don't know, weird and I don't know, but I think I realised in the last 2 years with having this pandemic going on and how we've all been living in this situation now for sort of 2 years, how quickly time goes as an adult. And it doesn't feel like that long ago that we were being told to pack up our stuff and leave the office, right? And even Christmas of 2020 doesn't feel like that long ago compared to Christmas of 2021. And so those few years ago when I was like, oh my god, this is so frustrating, I have all these books and I want to read them and I'm not going to manage it even in this year. Like, it's gone so quickly, and a few years later I'm still not there, but I sort of feel okay about it because I think just as an adult time goes really fast. What feels like, oh my god, you've got a whole year to try and do this, I can't click, okay? Interesting or not interesting fact about me, I can't click, whistle or wink. So yeah, but if I could click I would have clicked then. And so there's that. So I don't feel that bad about the fact that I've fucked this up, because life just goes so fast. But also over these sort of probably 4 years of feeling this way, I feel like I finally got to a point where within this year that I know will speed by, I actually think I can do it. So I feel really positive for the year ahead. So what I managed was, out of the 113 books I read in 2021, 16 of those were from those 63 books that I'd owned before 2021, so not great. 29 of them were from the library. One of my goals was that I wanted to use the library more, so I definitely achieved that. 13 of them were audiobooks. I would like to get through a lot more audiobooks than that, and I'm really going to try and attempt that in 2022 because I want to get out walking lots more than I did last year. 46 of those were new books. That feels around the right number for me. I like to pick up new books, and I feel like that if 2022 is similar to that, then I can work with that number, and I can probably manage to read that many new books, that many library books, and also clear the physical TBR, so I'll talk about that more in a bit. 7 were ebooks, because I sort of got into NetGalley a bit at the beginning of 2021, and then swiftly realised it was a bad idea because my TBR was already too big, and I don't love reading on an e-reader. And 2 were rereads. So yeah, as you can see by that, the most books I read were either new books I'd bought or new books from the library. A massive portion, 76 books of 113 were new to me books. And that doesn't even include the fact that some of those audiobooks would have been new books and some of those e-reader books would have been new books. So clearly I like to read stuff that I've only just been interested in. So again, proving the point that I am right to want to reduce my TBR. So if I only read 16 of those pre-2021 TBR books, then that made me think, okay, well, what happened to the others? Because I know I don't have all of them. So I checked and I only have 26 of them left that I'm carrying on into 2022. So that must mean that I DNF'd or unhauled without attempting 21 of them. Now, in 2021, to begin with, I started keeping note of my DNFs, and I was going to start doing videos talking about them. Combination of factors for that, I didn't find the time. And DNF videos can sometimes be fun and can sometimes be awkward to do because I don't mind so much when it's a book that lots of people love, because I'm like, well, my voice doesn't make a difference. But if it's a newer book from a lesser known author, then there's an element of guilt attached to that. And yeah, so I decided what I'm going to do instead is I've stopped my book club on my Patreon because I just wasn't very good at being organised with that. And I've switched that tier to being a tier where every month I talk about the books I DNF. I DNF a lot. Last year I DNF'd more than 30 books. So there's always going to be a few books each month to talk about. And I think that's going to work because it gives me a space to keep track of that, because like it's not something I keep track of on Goodreads or Storygraph. So yeah, I think that's going to work. So that is my plan. My Patreon is always linked down below if you're interested, but obviously if you're not, then don't worry. So there is that. So that means that I now have on my shelves 26 books that are left over that I've had since before 2021. So at this point they've sat unread on my shelves for at least a year, but the vast majority of them have been unread for a lot longer. I've got 21 unread books from just like the year in 2021 that I hauled or was sent and just haven't read yet. And then 18 from Christmas 2021. I felt like I wanted to separate them out because I feel like it would be pretty hard on myself to be annoyed at myself for not having read those yet, because, you know, I didn't have much time. So yeah, that means I've got 65 books total. 26 of those are much older, and then 39 are from 2021. So yeah, I feel like 65 is a number I can manage. I think that works out as like 5 or 6 books a month, and yeah, that is entirely doable, especially when I think about I'd like to read 12 books a month. I never really hit that. I had a look again for this, and a number I seem to always be around is around 113. I tend to be between like 110 and 120. So I think if I accept that I read 10 books a month, then that means if I want to read all 65 of those, I'm only really sort of allowing myself another like 45, 50 books. But I still think it's manageable. And do you know what? I'm not going to be super pissed off with myself if there's like 5 books left over from that 65, because like one of them is Middlemarch, and it's a book I'd like to eventually read, but so I haven't unhauled it, but I still don't know if it's a book I want to read this year. There's a couple of books like that, but like older books that I like the editions of. I'd still like to read them, but I don't know if that's going to be this year. So I'm going to let myself off on 5, okay? 5 of the 65. So I failed at the attempt to, you know, reduce that as I wanted to, but I'm okay with it. The other goal I mentioned is that I wanted to read more from the library, which I definitely achieved. I think I went too far with the library in 2021. What I mean by that is I didn't spend any time browsing the library. Maybe once I went to the library to browse. I ordered all the books from the library, like reserved them, and a lot of them just went back unread. And what the library became for me was this mechanism to, rather than going to buy the book online, I would go and reserve it at the library. And that worked because it didn't mean there was a new book on my shelf that just sat there. It meant a book would come into my home, I'd maybe keep it for like 6 weeks, and then if I hadn't read it, I might not even be interested in it by the end of the 6 weeks, which is what happened with loads of them. So I take them back, but I do think I let my library TBR take over, especially when I requested new books from the library. There'd be a hold on them. I'd have them for 3 weeks and I'd be like, well, I have to read all these books that have this you know, return date on them, this deadline, and everything else doesn't have a deadline. So I had 25 books still on my hold list at the library, and I went through it and I reduced it to 10, because a lot of them I was like, do you know what, I'm no more excited to read these than like books I've got at home. But it was almost just like a reminder for me, but that reminder is gonna mean I'm gonna have these books really soon to read. So I'm trying to be much more sensible about that and not just be really like happy on the library app and just like reserving everything. So I don't have a goal about the library in 2022, because I'm certainly someone who supports my library now, which is something I'm really happy about, but I just like to be more sensible about it, I guess, which I don't think is going to be that hard. Okay, what other stats have I got written down here? So I think another goal I had was that I say this most years, for the last few years, is that I want to try and read more non-fiction, because my favourite books of the year list for the last couple of years has ended up being quite non-fiction heavy, even though I read way less non-fiction books. So that was something I really wanted to focus on more, and it's exactly the same as it was in 2020. So I read 89 fiction books, 1 poetry collection, I don't know what you class poetry as, and only 23 non-fiction books, which has really disappointed me. And also I love memoirs, but I think a lot of those were memoirs, and one of my other goals, which I'll talk about in a moment, was to read more like informative non-fiction books, which is something I really failed at. I only read a couple of those towards the end of the year and really enjoyed them and regretted having not done it sooner. So yeah, definitely a continuing goal is I would like non-fiction to make up at least a third of my reading, and that's just because I really enjoy it, and I'm one of those people who, when people say what would you do if you won the lottery, I'm like, get so many fucking degrees. Like, I would just love learning shit. I would love just going back to university and getting like loads of undergrads and then like getting masters in it. I just love it. And right now the free way I can do that is to read like lots of non-fiction, and I'm not doing that. So definitely want that to be a third of my reading in 2022. I'd be really happy with that. But then just in terms of like the star ratings, so I gave, how many in total? 14 5 stars out of 113 books, because I'm a stingy bitch. And one of those was the poetry collection. 7 of those were for non-fiction, although one of them was a reread, so like, you know, I knew it was going to be a 5 star. And 6 of them were for fiction. But if you remove the reread from that, I gave 6 5 stars to fiction and 6 5 stars to non-fiction, but I read 4 times the amount of fiction. So for it to be on equal pegging in terms of 5 stars is crazy. So I clearly give higher ratings to non-fiction. I've known this for like 2 or 3 years, and I've definitely got better. Like a few years back I'd read like 5 non-fiction books, but it's still not enough, and I spend so much time thinking about what non-fiction I want to read, and I don't put that into action enough. So that's certainly something I want to focus on in 2022. So I think it makes sense to go to this goal now because of me mentioning non-fiction. So one of my 2021 goals was I wanted to focus on 3 topics in my non-fiction reads. I failed this, like completely failed this. One topic was the Troubles in Ireland, and for all 3 of these topics, I got so many great recommendations in the comments of that video, which I wrote down and I have lists of, and my library have loads of those books, so I have absolutely no fucking excuse other than the fact that I just didn't make time for sort of hardcore non-fiction reading. So I'm literally just replicating this goal. These 3 topics are still topics I'm really interested in, still topics I know I need to know more about. So I'm just going to carry this one on over, okay? So we have the Troubles in Ireland, the British Empire, and just South America in general. I said this in last year's goal video. I tried to read books in translation previously. In an area of the world I realised I was like severely lacking in context, both politically and socially, was South American countries, and I know it has a really complex history in that regard, and I know nothing about it, and so that was a topic I really wanted to focus on. The British Empire is something, and the British Empire and the Troubles in Ireland are stuff that's super close to home. Never learned anything about it at school or university or college or anything. And again, both things that I feel like come up a lot in life and in books that I don't have the context for, so I really want to. So yeah, those goals I'm just carrying on over. So I feel like, in a way, I hope this is still interesting, because when I had a look at my goals from 2021, I was like, so I sort of failed them other than the library one. But they're pretty much the same for 2022, and that's because I don't do this thing now where I set a shit ton of goals. It's super tempting, but I don't. And actually these goals are just things I'm interested in, so it shouldn't be hard to reach them. I failed last year, but I don't really feel bad about it. I just feel a bit like a wasted opportunity. These things I could have enjoyed learning about, really. So yeah, want to stick with those, definitely want to learn about those few topics. And if I achieve it, I'd like to then, pick a few new topics for each year. And then another goal I know I had, which is a goal that's been something I always, well, the last few years especially, I've been really thinking about on the channel, and that's to make sure I read diversely. And in the video last year, something I focused on was to do with race and nationality, and something I said, which I agree with still, is that I don't find it difficult as a reader to read books from African American authors or from Native American or Aboriginal Australian or First Nation Canadians. I don't find that difficult, and to a degree I don't find it difficult to pick up books by Asian Americans, but what I do find difficult is every other fucking part of the world, and also translated books. And a part of the world I think I mentioned last year that I really wanted to focus in on was Middle Eastern stories, because I realised that was the part of the world I was lacking in having read from the most, and entirely failed. I had a stack of books I was really interested in. I know my library has them, and yeah, I think this is one that did just fall to the back of my mind until the end of the year, and I failed, so I'm pissed off. So, like, in terms of just reading diversely, I think I read like 45% by authors of colour, which, I'd like it to be more than that. I just feel like I've spent an awful lot of time reading books by white authors, and yeah, so I'd like it to be more, but I would like that more to be made up of voices I haven't read from before, because it's just shitty of me that there's these people and these experiences that I don't know anything about. And again, I'm just shit at reading translated books. That's something I really struggle with. And people gave me recommendations last year, because I said my struggle with translated books is a lot of the time I find them, the books that are picked up tend to have a more stripped back writing style, or there's more of a distance from the characters, and sometimes I just don't feel smart enough to have all the context for those stories. But I've got loads of recommendations for books that people felt were easier in translation, and I just, yeah, fucked and didn't pick them up. So yeah, so that's definitely something I just want to roll on through to 2022. So yeah, I think that is everything covered. So basically, goals for 2022 are demolish the physical TBR. I don't mind carrying 5 of the 65 over, but the other 60, read, DNF'd, unhauled, whatever, I want them gone. Then just be a bit more sensible about using the library. Definitely still want to support the library, but don't be so like click happy and just, end up having that take over my reading. I don't know if I'm doing these in the right order. Read more non-fiction. I want at least a third of my reading in 2022 to be non-fiction. I also want to focus on those 3 topics in non-fiction, which are the Troubles in Ireland, the British Empire and South American just history in general. And then I want to try and read more diversely, but specifically focusing on areas of the world I've been shit at, in particular books from the Middle East and books in translation. So yeah, I think that covers everything. I'm sorry if this was a bit sort of rambly and chatty and confusing, but I hope it was somewhat interesting, and I hope if you have a TBR that is stressing you out and you've been thinking, God, I really want to sort this out, as someone who, you know, a few years ago had, you know, around 300 unread books, it really is possible, and I feel so positive about it. And I've got down now to this bookshelf that I can look at. I have them all together, all of my unread books together, and I'm like, that's super achievable, and all those books I'm excited about, and that's a really, for me, that's where I want to be. It's a really nice feeling, and I want to get to the point where this is where I want to be by the start of 2023. I want to only have enough books on my shelves that they don't sit there for longer than like 4 months. So I guess like 20. 20 to 30 I think is going to be the number I'm comfortable with, because that will give me the opportunity to feel no guilt in rereading or audiobooking or borrowing from the library or buying new books, because it'll be entirely manageable. That is the dream, pals. So let's see. So I think I will do check-ins this year. Something I kept thinking about doing last year was check-ins on these goals, and I didn't. I think I'm going to do either monthly or every other month check-ins on the TBR. Let me know what format you prefer. Do you think I should do that monthly or like less often? What I thought I'd do is just like not talk about the book specifically, but talk about out of the books I read, what boxes they ticked. Were they library books? Were they off my physical TBR? Were they new? And then, you know, how much the TBR has been affected by that. So definitely want to do that. And then maybe each quarter I'll do a check-in where I talk about those other goals and what I've managed with those. Let me know, does that sound interesting? Because if not, I won't bother. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this was somewhat interesting. I'd love to know your goals down below. And if out of anything I've mentioned you think, oh, I think that book would be a good recommendation, then of course let me know down below, and I will see if I can find it at my library. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!